Hello, everyone. Welcome to Brenda Sandy's Friday morning chat. Today is June the 10th, 2022. And what can we say? We're all just living the dream right now. A lot of people are getting concerned about what's going on, what we're seeing happening in the world. And what Brenda and I were discussing today, we're going to discuss despair, defeat, hopelessness, and ways to stay uplifted and positive in these difficult, dark times. So
it ain't easy. It ain't easy. Hey, everybody.
So there's so many things happening right now. And what I'm noticing is we're all in different places. So there's times a couple of weeks ago, I was down, just fed up with things. And then now I'm not down anymore. And then some of the people I'm talking to, we had a great conversation last night, laughing about all the insanities of what's happening. And we couldn't believe we're laughing, and we both feel very positive. So it's okay to go through different feelings. There's not going to be one size fits all, and we're not all going to go through things at the same time. But just to recognize where you are. And if you're feeling okay during this darkness, I think it needs to come out. And as much as I'm not impressed, I'm watching them because they're doubling down on the gaslighting, the targeting, the manipulations. And one of the things that I do is I try to, I'm going to use the word pride myself, pull myself out and just watch. So people will send me emails, and I look at the writing in the emails, and I can see if there's some of the people who are trying to gaslight me, but pretending to have a real serious problem or whatever. So I'm looking at things from a different perspective, because I've put it out there, a few things that what I'm concerned about, especially with the pedophilia and all that kind of stuff, that people are don't want it to stop. So that they're trying to get me to spin my wheels. It's just a game. It's all this is, right? They're just very immature people. But it doesn't matter. I'm priding myself. So here's another example. Someone posted on Telegram, a teacher saying that she's talking about all the 8 to 11-year-olds and how they know about all the 58 identities, gender identities, and they know about all this stuff. Like, there's no 8-year-old who knows all of that, because we don't even know all of that. And she says she's a teacher, and she teaches 8 to 11-year-olds. Well, guess what? Teachers get one age, unless there's children who are like they got a split class or fallen behind or ahead. You only get one. Like, you're all the same age. You're all 10-year-olds, you're all 9-year-olds, you're all 8-year-olds. So I figured she's gaslighting on social media to get people even more upset. So that was just one I didn't forward. I didn't post that one on my thread at all, just because I'm under the impression she's lying. But if I'm right, what if I'm wrong? I don't care. I post what I want, right? So interesting times for sure.
Oh, and very intense, I must say, right? And it's almost like they just keep twisting, right? They keep twisting and just, as you said, like doubling down and just really making it more and more intense. It's almost like they're grasping at straws in such an obvious way now. That,
so they're targeting the good in people. So they are starting to see who is the light. So, and you're feeling the twist. Totally, because they're seeing who is here to be the decency and the change, and who wants the old nefarious agenda to live on. So I'm going to suggest we all get a little thicker skin, which is not normally what I suggest. I tell them to quit screwing with people is normally what I would say, but there's got to be a bit of both. Know when to have a conversation with somebody outside of what we're talking about. Look, if you need to give yourself a distraction, pick up a hobby or try something, learn about a topic that you maybe wanted to know about, but don't have had the time in the past. And it's interesting, I went to see my astrologer this week, and I was talking about the planets, Pluto, as we talked about Uranus and Neptune, and she lent me books. They're not very thick books, but so I can get even closer into understanding the planetary energy from this author's perspective. But it's just interesting. So pick up a hobby of something that you want to learn about, but haven't had the time to do that. And give yourself a distraction, pull away, know when to unplug from the mass consciousness.
Huge. And we really need to.
Given the work that you and I do, this is so important that we do that, because if we're working with clients who are upset, if we absorb any of that energy, then that's going to affect our field and how we see things.
Absolutely. Actually hit me on Tuesday, the very same thing that you're talking about. I was messaged by a client who was feeling a lot of hopelessness and defeat, and despair is a big one. And just all of this really heavy, dense energy. And, it was really challenging for her to lift herself up. And you know, I did what I do, and I sent her a message that, you know, sort of helped her pick up, and told her to, you know, go watch a video that's funny, a movie that's funny, whatever, right? Like something that'll lift your vibration, laughter, humor, things like that. That's all very uplifting and, you know, inspirational stuff, especially. And I have to say that because I did not necessarily deflect it myself, and I didn't do a very good job of keeping myself, you know, protected from that, it hit me. And by the
Totally.
time I was like an hour later, I was on the couch. I was like, oh my God, I can't deal with this day. I'm done. It's 7:30. I'm laying on the couch. I'm like, okay, that's it for me.
So that is so true, and a great reminder, because people are going to be reaching out to those who work with consciousness and energies in whatever capacity. So if you read somebody's email, text message, whatever it is, take a phone call. If you're not protecting your energy, you are leaving yourself open. So more people are reaching out in, like, it's not necessarily just a scheduled appointment. They're reaching out maybe before the day they normally would see you because they're getting overwhelmed. But it's really important the energy coaches keep clearing their energy, like smudging this morning, coming through, creating a safe place for my workplace where I'm sitting right now, and just, you know, wanting the best for everybody, whatever our messages are today. And I just set the positive intentions, right?
Yeah, and that's it, right? And we want the highest possible outcome. If that's the only positive intention you placed for the morning, or for the day rather, in the morning, let it be that, because highest possible outcome is where we want to be anyway.
For all parties involved.
Right,
Right.
absolutely.
So one of the aspect of being women is, did you watch that documentary, What is a Woman? Matt Walsh.
No.
Oh, this is so fun. It is so funny because, you know, women are losing their crap about how special we are and how victimized we are, and we have rights, and we're always the underdog, and, you know, like this poor pity party kind of thing. So he's going up and asking all these different women, well, what is a woman? Not one of them that he showed could answer. It was just funny.
Oh, that's
It was funny. So he goes to a social scientist who's gay, from my opinion, from what I could gather from him, talking about all the social construct and the difference between gender and sex. So he says he's going to go into this university. They should know that they have knowledge. They should know, right? He walks out and he goes, well, I'm not sure what to think. I'm glad I didn't pay for that. It was like, just, I'm paraphrasing a bit of this, right? But just, it was just very funny because this guy, they're all going to get up and leave because they don't like the questions. This is who the social professors are, who are creating all this gender identity nonsense, right? Like, these people are just, they can't have their way. They're going to take their ball and go home. So I've watched it a couple times, but it was just, and I'm playing free cells, I'm listening to it, but you just start laughing because you realize just how insane our society is. And when you said you wanted to talk about despair, defeat, and hopelessness, I'm like, what was that the last 10 years of our lives, as they watch us, even the last 50 years, as they started de-sixing us in every aspect of what it means to be human, you know? So why is it now that people are feeling despair? Because they see it. So if a tree falls in the forest, do you hear it? So there's ways of looking at things through different perspectives. We need this to happen if we are going to bring in change. All I know is we're not going back to that shit show that we called the 80s, 90s, 2000, you know, like, we're not going back to the insanity, the absolute destruction of humanity, the infiltration and manipulation of every aspect of institutional living in the West. Like, we're not going back to that. So I'm like, okay, just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. And it doesn't mean I don't take breaks.
You got to.
So when all this is happening, so I want to also get back to what I enjoy, which is expanding consciousness and awareness. What does it mean to be human? And I know I use this chart a lot, but the very top one, the enlightenment, that is 700 to 1,000, where love is 500. Love is so important in this whole process, but so is knowing what the truth is. Some people are the opinion you have to be Buddha or Jesus to hit that level. I don't think, like, I just don't share opinions, the same opinions of a lot of people, which doesn't mean I'm right, wrong, different, good, bad, or anything else. I just look at things and say, does that resonate with me? Does that feel true? And if it doesn't, and a lot of the teachings, the new age teachings, you know, that came up on Monday, how I'm supposed to look at something. And I'm like, no. And this person was very adamant that I really need to look at this with a different perspective, which is, oh, if that hadn't happened to you, you wouldn't be who you are today. And I don't subscribe to that, because then that's going to be the energy going forward. We need to stop hurting people. So it was just interesting. And I love this person, nothing wrong, like nothing wrong with their conversation. I just chose not to subscribe to that. But being a woman, I can also change my mind if it suits me down the road. No harm, no foul, because we're allowed to change our mind. It's our prerogative. So how many women are going to change how they see things when we're watching the insanity? Because it's the women teachers that are teaching this nonsense in the schools. The majority of them are the female teachers. So we have some work cut out for us, but we also have some incredible opportunities if we choose to not get drawn into the despair. And one I find, as I was trying to learn energy work, what I found is if I went through something uncomfortable, my stomach would hurt. How many people get stomach aches below my navel? But that's where we process our emotions. So I realized I had a lot of emotional pain, suffering, whatever, experiences, whatever you want to call them, that I hadn't processed. But what I learned is the significance of our breath work, that when I breathe, I put my hand on my abdomen and I breathe right in there, and I'll talk to myself. I'll say, it's okay, you've got this. So you become your own higher self, get that connection, and be nice to yourself. It's okay, you don't understand this. It's okay. You'll understand it when you understand it. And it's interesting, a few people have invited me into, I don't know if you want to call them groups or experiences. And I'm like, I just use my intuition. I got to know. But I found out the reason last night by watching somebody show what the no was, why it was there. It's the answer. Now I know why it's no. But there's pieces of the puzzle that weren't there. And I'm like, without those pieces of the puzzle, I'm not moving forward. I need to know before I place my feet. Sometimes I do it that way. Other times I dive in and say, what the heck was that? I had this friend, this woman I knew once, and she could never tell when somebody was going to sabotage her or come up and do something and try to cause her a suffering. Like they call these targeted individuals. She could never see it coming, but I'm watching what's going on with her, and I'm watching the people around her, knowing they're getting ready to set her up, like very immature group of people. So I always compared her. She was, if we were walking along the train track, I would be the one going, the train's coming, trains are coming, trains are coming. I can hear it, I can feel it, I know the train's coming. She would be the one who got hit by the train, stood up and said, what the heck was that? I don't know which one's better, because they both come with stresses and they both come with their benefits, but they also come with the downfall of not knowing how to protect yourself if you don't know what to look for.
And I think that's key, right? The ability to protect yourself and to understand that sacred space is yours, is a sovereign right, and that we are entitled to have that for ourselves, that space. It's, that's your own little bubble kind of idea. And then other energies, those lower vibrations, they don't hit you the same. The despair, the hopelessness, all of that stuff does not hit you the same way, because you're protected from it, right? Like you've got a higher vibrational shield up, and anything that's not of that can't get to you. It just can't. So it's really important. And yeah, that's the thing a lot of people aren't really paying attention to right now, is how important it is to protect themselves. They figure that they're here in it, but the collective consciousness, as we're plugged into it, often, filters down all kinds of stuff. And if you're not aware, like you said, awareness is everything, right? If you're not aware,
now it is.
You don't know what's. Yeah, absolutely. And awareness offers, the insight of information, and information is light. And the way we see, and understand things or understand stuff is really important. And so the more you know, the more you glow. And, the way I see it is that awareness is everything. It doesn't have to be all good stuff either. If you're aware of the nasty stuff, then that empowers you as well, right? It has to.
Just energy, it's just information. And I'm not saying it's acceptable, the darkness. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form, but right now we're in the process of having to see what doesn't work so we don't recreate it.
That's right. That's right.
And I like how you talk about your sovereignty, your bubble, because this is so important that every human being realize you are entitled to a good life. You don't owe anybody an explanation for wanting a good life, wanting what's best for you. You can have what's best for you and still share that with other people. But it's really significant now as they're trying to gaslight everybody and drop everybody down, that you have to do what I say, when I say, because I say, how I say. You got to use the words I say you have to say when you're talking to me, but I can change my mind tomorrow and ask for different pronouns. And, a friend of mine just went to a conference, and it's in the States, but her name tag on the lanyard, it had her gender pronouns. She's like, what the? Nobody asked her, but the conveners, whoever set up these name tags, took it upon themselves to gender pronoun her. And I'm like, you people are so fucking stupid. Get off the planet. So some of the ignorance that we're seeing and the stupidity, they also are affecting the masses. And she tried to explain to them that wasn't appropriate. And I think she got a psychic attack from them, because she
Oh,
said to one of them, she goes, the one looked at me like I was throwing holy water on her. She was about to jump out of her skin when she said, you have no business putting these pronouns on my name tag. Oh, really? So a lot of people don't understand when their rights start and stop. So we're going to go through this. So it's really like you're saying, create your bubble, but know you're entitled to a good life. Know you're entitled to not have people try to take you out, whether it's through the air, the water, the food, the jobs, through institution, whatever it is. People do not have the right to do that to another human being. And this is how we're going to out vibrate, in my opinion, and come up to the higher consciousness, by knowing what your rights are as a human being. And that's how, like, I identify. What do I have to identify as? I identify as human, you know. And there's people would tell me, oh, you're only 10% of the population's human. How do you know you're human? I don't know. I've had there's conversations out there that are pretty insane, right? So yes, I've seen people's eyes, pupils change. I've seen them go into slits, so I know what group they're from. I've seen them go into diamonds. So it wasn't square pupils, it was diamonds. So I have a feeling those are Nordics. So I've seen different things in people, which doesn't mean anything. They maybe have a background within some of these other beings off planet, but it doesn't mean it's all bad or good or anything like that, right? But I just observe, but I asked to be shown the truth. But the idea, if you're gonna be asked to be shown the truth, get some poker face on. So when you do see it, you don't react, because you don't always want people to know you know. Sometimes
right.
playing stupid is your best bet. Doesn't mean you have to tell everybody what you think, right?
No,
So,
absolutely.
so when you're talking about ways to uplift ourselves, the one that is really helpful is connecting to nature. And I try to connect to nature every day. I even went out for a brief walk this morning, went down by the river and just, grounded a little bit. But so I'm curious as to what is changing, and I'm curious as to the consciousness and the awareness that's happening, and the veil is slipping. So this is what a lot of the despair is. The darkness is trying to keep us in the darkness. We don't want to be in the darkness, but most people aren't here to be fighters. So it's a contradiction in terms to fight the darkness. You can shine as the light, but if you're not standing your ground, they're just going to keep taking shots at you. But I was out yesterday and I'm talking to a friend of mine. Remember I told you about the purple snow? That the one time I saw the snow and it all turned purple. And I was talking to a friend the next day. She said, the sun has changed. It's no longer yellow, it's white, but it's ultraviolet. And I go, that was the color of the snow. It was only for a couple of minutes. I'm walking in the same part of the bush yesterday. I was telling my friend about this last night and we're laughing. And I look and it's all hazy. And I'm like, wow, I'm seeing plasma. I get closer to it and it's like, no, it's pollen. Because a lot of pollens from the trees are coming off, the wind was blowing. And I just had a good laugh by myself. So I'm open to things, but I don't have to have a certain outcome for it to be. So I'm laughing, thinking, okay, so I was a little optimistic, expecting something neat was happening again, but it was, so I don't know. So there's a lot of people going through different things for sure.
Yeah. And I have to say that I think one of the things that I find probably the most challenging, and maybe it's because it's my perspective and it's strictly, my own prerogative to have this perspective. However, I've come to know in my own world and my own experiences anyway, that, nobody likes the darkness. Nobody really likes it, but nobody minds when night falls and you're tired. Things like that. There are certain benefits to it, and it's all about what you're thinking about the darkness rather than what's in the darkness itself. But for me, one of the things I think of that I know it can dispel the darkness is light, and oftentimes that's a lot of love that comes out. And nobody, you don't have to like something to love it, but to appreciate what it's doing for us, because the darkness pushes us to the light for those that are ready to move that way, and for those that aren't, it just gives them a place to hide, which is fine. I mean, that's the way it's going to go. But I do find that, for me anyway, I've found that in the work that I've done with people, that you got to love the darkness. That's how you do shadow work in my world, and in what my experiences with my work and stuff is to love it till it's gone. Like, I mean, because you can love the evil, and people are like, what are you talking about? It's not about that. I love what they're doing. It's about, I'm loving them back to a place of healing, or into a place of healing. And if they're not ready to go there, they don't want to go there, that's fine. That's their divine right too. they'll go somewhere else. But either way, that love is going to make them move. It's either going to make them move this way or that way, but it's going to make some action happen, right? That's my thing. So I think that, one of the things I found really effective for people is laughter, like we said, laughing at those things that normally might not cause you to laugh, right? Like you might get a little upset about it, but if you can laugh in the face of evil, what does evil do? It runs away. It's like,
Or
well, I
it
got no
doubles
power.
down, or it doubles down depending on how big their clique is. So
True enough.
sometimes they work in teams that you don't understand how they work. And it's okay to watch everything that's falling away. I had an epiphany. I don't know what night it was. It would have been Monday night. Stu Peters was on, and he had a few doctors on. He had, what's her name? Jane Ruby. So I don't look at the dark as that. I look at it that it's not your right. And I'm not saying I'm right how I see it, but she's talking, and she was talking about Daniel Nagazi. He's a doctor from, I think he's in BC. I could be wrong. I think he's in British Columbia. And they were talking about synthetic demons. And he said, according to Zalewski, bromine and carbon were found in the shots. But he said you need carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus to remain biological. And he said what was he saw nothing but carbon and oxygen, meaning it wasn't biological. So we're getting a major manipulation right now of going on. So as we're seeing the darkness, we still have to navigate and not get sucked into somebody else's agenda. So he said phosphorus is needed for I thought phosphorus is needed for multidimensionality, but it was just kind of interesting that she was talking about what was going on with what he was finding, that this is what they're trying to make us non-biological. So I look at this, our most important thing right now, if you've already got love in your heart, congratulations. If you don't, work on it for sure. But we have the awareness is so important right now that we don't put our steps somewhere that are not in our best interest. So the other one he had on was Ariel, Dr. Ariel Love. Have you familiar with her? Do you know her name, her work at all? So what she was talking about, she said the disease was lobotomizing the frontal cortex. Well, this makes me perk up because I have a different view on the frontal cortex. Do you know when you touch your eminences on your forehead, you know those two little horns? If they're beating irregularly, or one is stronger than the other, or they're off kilter, chances are you're in fight, flight, or freeze. It's just a quick way to test. So I got to the point where I would do all my tapping to go through and, rolling my eyes. Now I just go in, if I feel I'm in it, I just go in and put my concentration there and bring myself right back to center again. So it took me not a long time, took me enough time to figure out how to do that. So she's talking about lobotomizing the frontal cortex with that one disease. And it was interesting because I was at a conference down in, I was in Tampa about 2017, and they had a keynote they brought in from the UK. And we were having breakfast the one morning. And I said, if you tap the left side of your forehead, you can calm your emotions down because that's your intellectual side of your brain. And he looked at me and he goes, why would you do that? And freaked out. I've been yelled at so many times. Like, now it doesn't faze me anymore because then I realize it's always somebody else's crap. It's never mine. I'm just sharing something I know. So then we went into the meeting room, whatever. He was fine. I was fine. And he started talking about his childhood. And he said, when I was a child, he goes, I was premature. I was in an incubator for the first 2 months of my life. I couldn't connect with my mother, so I couldn't feel my emotions. So this was interesting. So his issue with me saying you can calm your emotions down, well, that triggered him because he's spent his life trying to feel more of his emotions. So the same is true for the right side of the brain. If I'm not feeling connected, I can rub, and you're bringing blood to the forehead is what you're bringing. But the frontal cortex is your executive function. It's both your intellect and your ability to feel, right? But I just thought it was very interesting. And what she said is they're knocking out the X chromosome. So I want to shake the shit out of what we think we know about humanity, because I don't think we've got it true. Do you remember when they announced that the women are the YY chromosome and the men are the XY? Do you remember hearing that a couple of years, like, I don't know how many years ago? When I heard it on my radio in the car, and they said that the women were the XY chromosome. I said, yes, I know that. So I thought it was really interesting that a week later they came out and said, no, we read the report wrong. It's the men who are the XY chromosome. And I'm like, that's not right, but didn't care enough because it wasn't a field of study that I was interested in. So what she has said, this doctor said they're trying to knock out the X chromosome. Well, the man, pardon my handwriting, the man has one. He has a phallus. He only has one sex energy. The woman has two. Clitoris is masculine, vagina is feminine. The women are the XY chromosome. They're trying to take out the feminine energy out of our chromosome structure. So everything that we have been taught is a lie.
Oh, absolutely.
She said they want to delete the X chromosome in the frontal cortex. So it means then, is that going to be our emotional center that's going to be out? And we need our emotional center to feel love, to get into the higher consciousness. That's Sandy's epiphany for today. I've been saying it a few times this week, but just, so do you notice when we're not getting caught up in the despair and the hopelessness,
Yep.
we can see how they're trying to continue to manipulate so that we can stay out of that energy. That's kind of where I'm at with it, right? That's, but it doesn't mean I won't be in a bad space next week as well.
Well, you know, I think that's interesting that they're talking about that specifically, because I know that one of the things I did come across was the fact that there is an actual target for the X chromosome itself, and it actually turns it off in people. The other thing is, of course, anything natural is, of course, the way for us to stay and go. So yeah, connecting to nature is extremely important right now for anybody and everybody who's feeling anything of a disconnect or distortion. However, one thing I'll mention to you too is that Monday was actually a 666 day, which is kind of an interesting time. So when you notice the 666 days that are coming through this month, right? We've got the 15th coming up and then again the 24th. Those days in particular, they're going to be really amped up, and we're going to have a lot of over intensified energies, right? Amplified energies. And so it's a great day for us to go out and do that very thing, connecting to nature, because that's exactly what they don't want. They don't want us being natural. They don't want us being nature, and they don't want us being in it or of it. So biologically, organically, yeah, that's where you got to go. And that's what you got to do. Walk, earth, they call it earthing now, but it's grounding, right? Get your shoes off, get outside. Now that the weather's warm, get outside, stand on the ground barefoot, because the electrons and the electrodes that we have in our feet and everything in our body, that moves that circuitry through us, that energy is important. We have to hold on to that, and it strengthens us. It actually helps to not just uplift us, but it helps to refortify and fortify our entire being as an organic experience that we're having here, right? Or that we are here. So
we want to
really
stay herein for sure. And
yeah.
so I think it's good that information came out on the 6th, because information is power, even though we might not like what the content was, but it still gave us an opportunity to have an aha moment if we chose to stay in that frame of mind, right? So when you're talking about the grounding, one, as these magnetic energies are coming in, a lot of people are feeling really high right now. So one of the techniques for grounding, as you're talking about being outside without your shoes on, is just imagine your heart chakra. Imagine taking all the energy down from your heart chakra, solar plexus, sacral, root chakra, right down your legs, right down past your knees and into the ground, and connecting with like a root system or a magnet system on your feet, and walk as if you've got magnets on your feet. And just, it'll give you just, even if you do it for 10 paces, it doesn't matter. It can help you bring that grounding energy and make you connected. So that is totally great advice about the grounding that you just shared.
Encourage people, yeah, and I also encourage people to imagine themselves as a tree, and just like you said, with branches that come out through your soles of your feet. There's a reason we have them. We have chakras in our feet as well, but the soles of your feet are really important. And so you can, you know, sort of imagine yourself with these tree branches, or roots rather, that come through the ground, go right down to the core of the earth, and to actually strengthen you that way and to hold you in space. That's super important. The other thing I've been working with a little bit lately, and helping others work with as well, is when you bring the energy in and when you're breathing, to bring it in a clockwise motion, because everything has been counterclockwise, right? That's how they distort it all. So you bring it in a clockwise motion. And when you do that, you can actually bring it down through your legs that way as well, like separating it, but bringing it down through. And that's a very powerful process to actually to really strengthen that grounding for ourselves.
And that's interesting. I like how you're bringing in the clockwise, because when we were going through a lot of the clearing in the last number of years, people were doing the counterclockwise, releases the dark energy off you. Clockwise brings in the good. So exactly, that's really good that you're saying that too, just so that people understand, change the spin on the energy of what you're trying to bring in.
Well, that's because that's what they're working with, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is, you know, it's all about magic and things like, you know, that most people think are not real because we've been taught they're not real. Harry Potter's not real. Lord of the Rings isn't real. Bullshit. It's all real. It's all Star Wars. Right now we're living in Star Wars. Okay. And you got to grab a lightsaber, and you got to recognize that you have the power, right? It's all within you. The sword, the force is with you. But But it's really important for us to keep in mind, of course, that, you know, it's all about what their intention is, because that's how magic works. It's all about what their intention is. So therefore, it's also about what your intention is too. And you can dispel a lot of that magic just by using the right intention.
Right intention and right words and understanding. I was watching Nicholas Vignon, I can't remember his guest name, and he was talking about, like, I call them the nursery rhyme crimes. Rockabye baby, something in the treetop, when the wind blows, the cradle will rock, the bough breaks and down falls baby. I don't know rockabye baby, obviously, but it was like, that was a negative energy that we were putting on the babies, because the babies are falling out of the trees and dying. The other one was, so we're going to name a couple of these. You might know of a couple too, right?
Well, actually, I was just going to say, you know, that's actually one of our most primal experiences and responses energetically, right? Because, well, of course, a lot of people believe it's because of the primate stuff in us, but there's this natural response to falling that we have where we react, right? Like, I mean, when babies are first born, they do something called an APGAR test on them, and they check their senses and all this stuff. And one of the things they do is kind of toss them up to see if they do that, which is interesting, because if there's a delay in there, they know there's something not quite right here, or something's delayed in some way.
They do that to a baby after it just comes down the birth canal. Holy.
Well, and think about that. Think about that. Like, they poke them with pins and shit just to see if there's a response, if they've got nerve problems or all of that stuff.
These
I didn't
people
know
are
that
sick.
until my second. Oh yeah. Well, it's not enough that we're traumatized coming through the birth canal to begin with, right? I mean, that's
and
why
your
we're
placenta's chopped off. Like, these people are sick and they think this is normal.
And it's not.
It is not normal. So let's do one more nursery rhyme crime. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water, and I'm told this has to do with the Admiralty law. Jack fell down and broke his, I'm going to say crown, but there's another word for that in Spanish. And Jill came tumbling after. It's always about us falling down. And then our names went to the bottom of documents instead of the top of documents, that the way it was supposed to be written. And what was the other one? Ring around the posy, ring around the rosy, pocket full of posy, husha, husha, we all fall down. So we're teaching the children to fall, be down. Same as the money system is inverted, the colors are inverted, the 5s and 10s are the higher frequency energies. Like, everything is inverted. So, you know, going back to what you said about when you're calling in the good, bring it in clockwise. Counterclockwise is out, clockwise is good. So we're starting to shed some of that old programming, even by sharing the stories and the information that we know is so powerful to help people just to align with what's right. I'm not saying I don't get ticked off at things the way I see them, but I'm grateful that this is falling apart. This is what we need to see as society that has done nothing but traumatize humans. Do you know who, Brian? So do you know who Phil Schneider is? I came across him on the weekend. I ended up Saturday morning, I think, just watching like an hour and a half of his video. He was a man, they figured they killed him in the 1996 or something, because he had a lot of information on the underground bases and what was going in with the aliens and different metals and all kinds of things. But it was quite interesting that they were talking about the NWO back then. But how much of us, like, I had no idea that was what was going on. I was such a good little girl at that time, doing everything by the book, thinking I'm just an upstanding member of society, blah, 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 right? I had no idea that there was people, and that's the one thing that is so wonderful now. There's so much information being shared if we choose to look at it. He talked about metals he said they got from the ETs. He said the one can withstand temperatures of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. He said that's what they make the stealth bombers out of in the US. Like, we know nothing, us little surface dwellers, compared to what's available.
Surface dweller. Now that's an interesting, I just finished reading a book by this wonderful lady, Patricia Corey. And one of the things she talked about was the subterranean worlds and how much is actually going on below the surface here in this, you know, on this planet that most people don't even think about. They don't even think about it. And yet the portion of dumbs and stuff like that, that's just one piece. Like, below that, there's an enormous amount going on as well. And everybody else has been taught that it's just a big old ball of fire, right? It's all lava and fire and whatever else at the core. Bullshit. I call it bullshit. I've been doing that a lot lately.
And this is really good, that setting our intention to not be lied to anymore, to know when we're being lied to. That is excellent what you're saying, just with a bit of a reframe on that. We're tired of the lies. We want to know the truth. So they're going to still send lies to us while we go through this. Gina Maria Colvin Hill just did a video. I plugged it in this morning and then fell back to sleep, so I didn't listen to it all. And she's talking about the underground bases. Like, how many people have talked about this? Emery Smith has talked about this. How many people have actually talked about these bases, and we're all supposed to pretend they don't exist because your teachers aren't allowed to tell you about it? You know, so
Well,
there's so much to be curious about.
what's quite interesting about that is if you happen to catch, on the regular television, which I don't watch a lot of, but I on occasion will watch stuff. America's Book of Secrets is an interesting show to watch because they do tell you all the stuff that they don't, they expect you not to believe it, right? And yet there's very valid and credible people standing there talking about this stuff. And one of the things they talk about are these incredible, the tunnel systems and stuff like that that are actually built and very, very modernized and have been for like decades for God's sakes, in case of nuclear bombs and attack. So you've got places where the presidential administrations and stuff like that will go. They'll be taken there because it's safe. Well, same shit, different pile as far as I'm concerned. Like if that's real and valid and it's perfectly okay for the president to be, hustled off to this place and shuffled off to this place to be kept safe from whatever else, then what else is going on there? Like they've done this. We see subway systems, that's subterranean. Like people don't make the connection, eh? They really don't make the connection.
I know. And it's interesting when they, you can see some of the machines they use. I think one might've been at CERN where you can hear something going behind the rocks, and then it comes out and it's boring the tunnel. And they say whatever they use to bore the tunnels, it basically melts the rock. So it's all shiny in there. And I don't know what they call it. It's a rail system. If you look on the internet, Patty Broussard has put a lot of these maps out. I know Gene Decode has put these maps out. I'm not saying follow anybody, take whatever information people want, but they've got them crisscrossing all across the United States, Canada. I don't know if I've seen any from Europe, but the 401 series highways, we've talked about the Fibonacci sequence that comes around the Great Lakes. I think this is why they opened up all the stores and they've opened up the Western society to nighttime living, because what was happening, there was so much noise in the rail system underneath the 401 that people could hear it. So now they have traffic running it all the time, so people can't hear what's underground. I know there for a while in Windsor, they were saying they could hear underground mining, and somebody comes out and gives the excuse, it's the salt mine. Like there's always somebody who's got some rote answer who just has to put something out there to make them look intelligent, but they haven't really looked into any of these possible alternative explanations for this. So this is part of the good stuff that's coming out and setting standards. I do not accept people's lies anymore. And it's not that I'm looking for lies. I go in being neutral and I just listen to what's being said. And is there anything that tweaks my interest? And this is a great time for us to be working on our own intuition. Because now we're going to need our discernment more than ever. So yeah, it's easy enough to go into despair, but what are we in despair about? What has changed in the last 6 months that wasn't present in the last year? We can even say now 2 years for one instance, but even outside of that, you look at all the government programs that are trying to help humanity and fix relationships and all this. I came across some papers, the Department of Justice. They did a whole presentation on transgenderism. They're the ones who want the transgender. The Department of Justice, hey, what is it, guys, with all your perversion? You don't understand what offenses certain people are committing against children. Those people are getting no criminal, no jail time, but people who are trying to do the right thing are going to jail. They're the ones trying to do that, like introduce the transgenderism. And I just was going through my papers and I'm like, the whole system is just upside down. It's for the evil, for the Luciferianism, right?
Absolutely. Well, and look at the word evil itself is backwards, right? It's live backwards. And as soon as you find out that, that is live backwards, you can have a whole different perspective about things. The same with the devil, right? It's of backwards living. Same thing. De evil is what the French would say. And same shit. Again, it's about recognizing that they've just twisted everything around, turned it upside down, backwards, for whatever. But that's it's actually their joke on us. Again, come back to mockery, right? I mean, it's absolutely
all the mockery. Ha I fooled you. It's all frazzled.
Right in your face.
Right in your face. But meanwhile, if you knew they had a personality disorder, that they needed to do that to you to make themselves feel good, that's how they exercise their emotions, you would have a different opinion of them and they would have a different opinion of themselves. You always know when I'm over the target, the sun comes in very bright. That's when I'm saying something like this. Someone pointed out to me this week as well, Evian water. Backwards, naive. No,
Yep.
like I didn't know that, but no surprises once we start to figure this out, right?
No, and that's it. Like they play the, you know, they play the game and then they prey on the stupid. And ignorance isn't, you know, it's just a lack of knowledge, really. It's just this complete, you know, uneducated space. And but they play on that and they prey on that, and that's exactly the name of their game, right? It's incredible.
They prey on people. And if we're going to make the changes we want to see in humanity, that has to stop. We have to stop tolerating it. We have to understand the games they play, call them out on it. We have to set our expectations. We want the truth. We know they're going to keep lying, but it's up to us to discern the truth. You know, I find it interesting when people go back and tell me the history. I think you and I have even spoken about this, and I'm like, there's no guarantee that anything we've heard from any of the philosophers, from anything is real, because the victors write the history book. And the only reason history repeats is because it's the same people who've been in charge, the same mindset, the same heart space for the last thousands of years. So this is how they play the game. History repeats because it's the same people doing it, you know, so.
Absolutely. And then, you know, karma also plays a big part in that, right? Because it's all cyclical stuff. I do find, though, that as I was reading these books by Patricia Corey, which I absolutely adore, Atlantis Rising, like this is a repeat. I've often said that this is a repeat of Atlantis, what's happened back then that nobody's been told, right? Atlantis isn't real. You can't even prove it existed, blah, blah, blah. So therefore it's not. You know what? That's part of the whole game for them. It's part of this deception that we're not supposed to know the real truth about anything, so that we are not empowered, right? Because then otherwise we have the truth and the truth will set us free. We have been microdosed. There's a lot of truth out there, but it's hidden. It's overwhelmed with other things, and it's again distorted, right, to a certain degree. You know, it's interesting about those the nursery rhymes and stuff, because it also you can relate that back to all the fairy tales as well, right? Like look how much of the fairy tale world is like, just what on earth are you teaching people?
Right, the horrors. There's always somebody
Yeah.
evil in the storyline.
Hansel and Gretel. Hansel
I
and
was just
Gretel is
thinking that one.
one of the worst, right? Yeah, because of course the evil witch in the woods takes the, you know what, and that puts people, again, it's a play on the magic stuff, right? They don't want you finding empowerment, and so they make, you know, witches evil and all of this stuff issue, but that's just to keep people away from what really could be a powerful place to sit, truthfully.
No, you're right about the Hansel and Gretel. That was the one I was thinking of. That was a traumatizing story, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, almost every Disney movie has your parents killed off, at least one of them killed off anyway. And, you know, I mean, people don't think about that. They, oh, that's life. No, it's not. It's not supposed to be life. That's not what life is supposed to be, unless they tell you it is and then you believe it.
So this has been a thought that's come into my mind a few times. And I'm thinking, because of what we've seen within Hollywood and what we've seen with these productions, is what we're considering that we love the stars is not. It's what they do is they make us feel sorry for them. And I think I told you, so all these stories, there's a trauma, and oh, you feel bad for Simba the lion, and you were just, and I'm not saying Simba is good or bad, but with even just the real people in the Hollywood. And I think I mentioned the time I watched a Kevin Spacey movie, knowing what I know now. And within whatever time, the first scene he's come in, I know I've talked about this, the first scene where he turns around, his face is burned, but he always plays the victim. And that's what you're describing within these stories as well. There's always an evil person and you're always aligning with the victim, but that's not love. That's just feeling sorry for them. So it's just, even our concept of what love is, people love the stars, even that concept has been distorted. It's not love. It's they got you to feel sorry for them because they were the underdog, or they had to fight their way out of something. So then we start seeing that we got to fight our way out of everything. So I've had that thought a few times, just came into my mind the one day.
And you know, that's it's interesting that you bring up the Hollywood, because if you notice, there's really hasn't been a lot of stars floating around on, you know, a lot of social media. The biggest thing lately, of course, was yet another distraction with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp's trial, all that bull crap, which I didn't watch any of, but you know, I heard a lot of people talking about it, because clearly it was a major distraction and of interest to a number of people. Fine, good for you. However, it's always one thing after another. I mean, we had the Will Smith slap, and then things died down a little bit. We had a bit of the war of Ukraine going on, and then all this other stuff going on. Then boom, we needed something else, right, to take us away from what's really playing out. And I noticed that there was a few things, like Ellen's show is ending and things like that. Well, I wonder why. I wonder why. Have you seen Ellen lately? No. Why? Because she looks like hell. Why? Because she's lacking in something we all know she's been wanting, that has been put, there's been like a kibosh put on that, we'll say, lately. So those kinds of things are important for us to know, but there's always going to be something to distract us, to make us go, oh, and look up there, look over there.
Matthew McConaughey, he wants the guns out. So somebody put together a mirage of all the different roles he played where he was shooting guns, and they put it out on it, like created a meme. And how many Hollywood stars have security guards with guns? Oh, but you think everybody else should not have them? Like, we're just starting to see the absolute desperation in some of these stunts. But again, if we're not in despair and we're not upset and worried about what's going to happen, we just know we're moving through this and keeping our center as we move through this. But we're starting to see how we've been conned in the past, regardless if it's this much. It doesn't matter, right? So I've been conned a few times. Oh, well, it's what you do about it when you find out and how you get out of it.
How you react. Are you going to react, or are you going to respond? Because there's a big difference. It's a fine line, but there's a big difference, right? Responding is a much more centered and in command place to be, right? Or to be acting from, whereas reaction is completely rebelling, right? Or it's a, what do you call it? It's a rebound.
Reflex. Yeah.
It's a reflex, exactly. And that's just, you're using what you've got because it came flying at you, and you're using it, throwing it back. And that's just not productive. I don't think, anyway.
And I always find it doesn't matter what happens. We're all learning as we go. Observe yourself as you react to something. Is something making you trigger? What is it? Why? Is it yours? Is something in the past? Is it something you stand for? Is it one of your values that it goes against? Like, start looking at how you react to things as just as if you're the observer watching yourself and seeing why do I react this way?
Yeah.
So, and sometimes when you don't react, you throw them right off because they can't figure you out.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you know who David Brenner is?
Oh, I know that
The
name.
comedian?
Sure.
The
Oh, yeah,
comedian.
yeah.
So he used to talk about how to get rid of people, right? And he says, if you're on the phone and you want to get rid of somebody, he goes, hang up halfway through your sentence. He goes, nobody ever hangs up on themselves, so they'll think something just happened to the call. Like, he would come up with different, I found some of his strategies back there very funny, right? I don't do that. If I got something to say, I say it. But it just little things that he would come up with that were pretty funny. If you want to get rid of somebody on the street, he said, start looking at their ear. Just watch their ear. Watch their ear. And they're going to notice you're watching their ear. And he goes, you gently ease them into traffic. like it was funny, but so when you're observing things from a different perspective, you can see how you react. You can see how other people react. So it's really important as we go through. So are we defeated? No. We talked yesterday, Norman and I were talking about the pension fraud in Canada, including Canada Pension and what's happened with his pension, the firefighter pension, how it's connected to BC, a company in BC and a certain pig farm. So it's just kind of interesting. So some people might think that was a very destructive conversation. It wasn't. That stuff has to go down because we're not doing that anymore. We need a new quantum system that allows everybody to hold their own pension contributions in their own digital wallet, so they can access those funds, because we don't even know where our money is. And according to Norman, he says they blended it with good money, with bad money, like corrupt money. So that means it's all corrupt. So are they going to take the pensions away? Is that why they want the older people to get a certain procedure so that they are no longer going to be eligible to collect Canada Pension and old age security? Because, you know what I mean? So who knows? We don't put anything past them.
No, I don't. With a grain of salt, slice of lemon, and a shot of tequila, I'll tell you. That's how I think most of this shit nowadays. But anyway, but that throws me because, when you realize that if it wasn't for this deceptive system to begin with, none of us should need any of that. We should not need a pension of any kind outside of our own working pensions, maybe. But, like Canada Pension Plan, old age pension, like anything reliant on the government, that's exactly their plan. From the moment you're born and your parents sign your birth registration, you're done. You're done. You're done. They have
part of their system.
Stolen your money and everything. Like, none of us, we should all have a card of acquiesce where basically you show the card, you get what you need. You buy the house, you sign on paper. That's not you owning a mortgage, like a death pledge, for God's sakes. That's you receiving what's rightfully yours, like truthfully, rightfully yours. They've taken everything from us,
They
you know,
have.
and then they expect you to pay it off for them because they took a loan out on you. And now that's what we spend our lives doing. That's why we pay taxes. That's why we pay all this shit. That just, I absolutely begrudge paying taxes. And I have
So
to really do
we
some
pay
work on
them.
that energetically because, you know, that's
And you can work on that. And we've talked about that last time we were together, talking about changing our consciousness and going for what's good, you know, setting our intentions for something that's higher, this or something better, or, you know, for the highest good of all people involved. But we pay these people to police us within whatever dysfunctional structures that, whether it's education, law, whatever it is, right? There's certain medical systems. We pay these people to keep us suppressed. It's insane.
it is exactly like that. Just sends me because I'm like, you know, I am every time I have to pay taxes on something or at all, I'm like, I'm almost validating their system. And that's not my deal. But how do you get away with that? How do you get out of that? And that's the
So
challenge.
that's another story. But you know, it's interesting. In 2009, Ontario brought in the harmonized the HST, and there's a fellow at one of the investment companies, and he kept writing. Dalton McGuinty was the premier. Dwight Duncan, I think, was the finance minister of Ontario. He kept writing them and saying, "Why are you putting a consumption tax on a savings vehicle?" So even though the expense was like 2%, then it went up to 2.26%, 13% times 2, right? So basically you're paying 0.25% on your investment to taxes for consumption, which is a savings vehicle. And they wrote him a letter. This is the arrogance that we're dealing with these people in these positions. They wrote him a letter and said, if you do not cease and desist, we will ruin you. So this is a man asking legitimately, what are you doing? So he took that letter and went to the Globe and Mail and took out a full page ad on the very last page and posted this letter. Well, they couldn't send him another letter because he would have the evidence. So they called him and said, we're not kidding, we will ruin you. This is the system that we bow to. So now you imagine the children, what they're up against, these adults with this type of an agenda that don't care about anybody but themselves. You imagine what the little ones are up against. And this is why we really need to take a good hard look at everything we're doing. So when we're in despair right now, we're not defeated. We were defeated when we didn't know what was going on. But now we see, you know, are we going to win? I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
We're not going back.
you know, there's the 5 of Swords in the tarot deck is actually a card known as the defeat card. One of the things I've come, as my cards and I have evolved a number of times over the many years we've read together, one of the things we've realized is defeat is a place where you recognize all the things that just don't work. But there's always something that will work, you know, and that defeated space is like, sometimes you got to get to rock bottom before you realize, okay, it's up to me to find the way up. And that's the key. So it is important to note, and despair may be prevalent right now, and it may be part of the collective, but it doesn't have to be individually ours, right? We don't have to own that. It's certainly easy to get caught up in it for sure, because when you look around and depending on what you're seeing, your vibration is going to provide you with that which your already frequency, your frequency is already showing. So stay above it. Try to stay above it as much as possible, even if it's slightly above it. You know, not everybody can be sunshiny all the time. No. I get that. That's just how we are. But that's the point, right? Is to recognize when you're starting to slip and not let yourself get right down there.
And if you do, why? Ask yourself why, and hopefully you have a few people around you that can help you lift yourself out if you're having trouble with pulling yourself out of it. Maybe there's a reason you're in a deep despair, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't last long. Now I'm going to knock on wood. And hopefully it won't be.
Well, and the thing is that it's only going to attract to you if you're already carrying some sort of vibrational equivalent, right? So if you can recognize that it's showing you something as well, that it can empower you in that moment. Well, shit, I must have something in me somewhere that's either fear-based or whatnot. Then I can work on that. And when I work on that, then I'm once again, I'm beating the game. I'm not just changing it, I'm beating it. That's the game. We got to win. We are winning. We have already won. In a future timeline, if people subscribe to that concept, then we already know God wins this one, right? We know that. Light wins every time.
And I'm not quite on that page yet. We still have a lot of work to do, but so I just look at it a little differently, not right or wrong. We're not going back. We're not going back to that shit show that does nothing but destroy people's hearts, minds, and souls, right? That's what I see, that we're creating something better. So maybe I've got more of a worker bee kind of attitude in this regard for this. But I'm tired of people saying, oh, let's wait. We've already got to get your popcorn. I'm not in that camp whatsoever, because we still have to create the good.
You can't wait. And that's the point. We are here to create. We are creator
Yeah.
beings. That's what we're for, right? That's what we're here for.
And we're doing that.
I just sort of see us as like the finish line is over here somewhere, you know, and we're just still here, right? Like that doesn't mean it hasn't got a place, or it hasn't been placed out or taken care of. But right now on the conveyor belt that is our world, we are right here, and we have work to do. We do have work to do to create that, because otherwise it will very easily, if nobody does anything about it, it's going to stay the same. If you don't do something about it, you're just going to end up right where we were before, which again, that's Atlantis, that's the implosion, that's all kinds of nasty stuff where the darkness took over, and look what happened. Not going to happen here. Not on my watch.
I like how positive you are with that, for sure. And I tend to agree with that, but it's going to take a bit of work. But what else are we going to do?
Exactly, right.
For sure. So are you okay if we leave it here today for now? And you're busy next week, so we'll pick up in a couple weeks, and we'll be back, and hopefully
coming up in July soon enough. Like, oh my God.
This is going by pretty fast, isn't it? I know.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, next week I'm out of town, but definitely the week after we'll catch up again.
Sounds good. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for checking in with Brenda and I, and hopefully we can give you some moments of inspiration and know it's going to be okay. We believe it's going to be okay. And we're here if anybody needs us. As always, our information is in the description box, and give us a shout if you want to. So take good care, everybody.
Take care now.